Today in the mail, I received my replacement airbox for my 2005 VN 800 motorcycle, and I'm going to try to show you how I'm going to modify it for higher airflow. This is what's called scooterizing. There's also gramp sizing, and then there's some aftermarket airboxes that you can buy as well. But I'm going the cheap route, so I'm going to show you how to do that. First thing you're going to want to do after removing the airbox from the motorcycle is take off your outer cover. So you just remove the nut and pull the air filter cover off. Now that we've got all the other stuff taken off, there's 8 screws to remove, which will remove the back half of the snorkel portion of the air box. Now that you have your 8 screws and the snorkel portion taken off, go ahead and throw this shit in the garbage because you're not going to be reusing that. For the purposes of doing this modification, I'm going to remove this boot here so I don't damage it at all. You can just push that out. Put that somewhere safe. Alright, so we're down to the part where we got to start cutting the other part to the snorkel off, as well as modifying the inside. We've got to get rid of some of these ridges, we've got to fill this in, that sort of stuff. So I'm going to start on the back because I think that's the easier part to do. What I'm going to do is take a hacksaw, cut this portion off. Alright, I've gotten the portion that's visible from the front off, so this is going to be a huge pain in the ass trying to cut this with a hacksaw. So I'm going to try to figure out a better way to cut this off quickly. I tried some side cutters to break it off. It actually worked pretty quick, but when you when it went through the plastic, it kind of exploded the other part off. So I kind of rethought my previous idea about the side cutters, and I figured I was just going to take smaller little bites out of it with the side cutters. It actually works quite well. If you don't take too large of a cut out, it doesn't seem to want to explode out. It's slow going with the side cutters, but it is making progress. Alright, I'm almost done with the side cutters. It's doing a pretty good job. Most people will probably want to use a Dremel on this. I do have a Dremel. I'm going to use the Dremel to clean up these edges, but I've cut plastic with a Dremel before and it just sprays shit everywhere. You get filthy. It just melts the plastic instead of cutting it, so it stinks. But you will most likely want to use a Dremel or something a bit faster, because if you, I don't know, it's tough on the hand squeezing this thing over and over and over again. So okay, so I chopped a good bit of the material off with these side cutters here. This is actually the next day. I ran out of time, but the side cutters gave me a awesome blister from clamping on all along to get rid of all that material there. So I think I'm going to try the Dremel. Well, I have to admit that made pretty quick work of that, but it also made a huge mess. And as you can see, it really kind of melts and balls off and flies into your face when you're using the Dremel, because it doesn't really grind away the material. It sort of melts it. But hey, it did a pretty good job. Didn't take very long either. So I think I'll probably stick with that method for doing the inside here. The next step that I'm going to do is removing this inner edge here. Comes up from the side here. As you can see, I've actually started removing it already. I'm just using an X-Acto knife and carefully cutting along. Don't go too much, but I figure I can angle the knife and use the inner lip here as a guide to actually get it pretty close, and then just clean it up with the Dremel. So I've cut off the majority of the inner plastic piece. So now I'm just going to go in there with the Dremel and carefully clean up the edge. There's maybe anywhere from 2 to 5 millimeters or so of plastic left on the inner edge. Don't get rid of the outer edge though, just the inner one. Alright, I've gotten the edge smoothed up okay. There's a couple little ridges in there, but that's okay. This isn't a sealing surface anyways. So next step is to remove this inner part here, as well as trim down the outer edge here. You don't have to remove the whole part, but when you try to fit the filter in, probably won't be able to see that super well. But it's just a frickin' blonde sea hair away from being able to fit in there, so gotta trim off some of that plastic there. It's not really the end of the world because the carburetor boot seals on the inside, so it'll be fine. Okay, I finished the grinding of the inner portion here. There was the little louver pieces here. There's a raised portion here, so that obviously needs to be covered. Yeah, just kind of everything in the outer periphery here needs to be removed, because I'll show you. This is the air filter that goes inside here, and it just barely squeezes into the outer portion there. I don't know if you can see that, the lighting's pretty poor in here, but it's like right on the outer edge of that. I wouldn't worry too much about getting the inside edge totally flat and smooth. I'd worry more about the actual back of it. However, this is going to be sealed up and have weather stripping put around the outside of it. So for example, when I put my filter in, I kind of looked at it from the side, and this portion here seemed a little higher, but with the weather stripping in there, that'll all even itself out, so that's good. Now, I had to think about for a little while what the best way to remove all this was. I ended up using a Dremel tool with a little sanding thing there, so that was very handy. And then the other part, for the really fine details, this thing made a hell of a mess, but it's like a teeny little die grinder, and it's very slow going, but when you're over here in the corners, it helps take out this sort of stuff. Just got to be careful because it'll dig in real quick. Another thing that I'll add is obviously try not to mark up this outer edge here too much, but you're probably going to mark it up a bit. For example, right here, I got it with that die grinder a little bit, so it made a little bit of a nick, because this will be possible to look at from the outside, but you can put chrome door trim around the edge there, which will kind of clean it up a little bit. So now that I've gotten everything cut off that I need to remove, there are these two teeny little holes down here. I don't know if you can see those, and then this big hole that needs to be sealed. The big hole, I'm going to take a piece of plastic and put it over there. That'll probably get a little piece of plastic of its own. This, I'll put a piece of plastic over it from the outside. Okay, so I went out to the hardware store and I picked up some plastic bonder glue. This one I checked on their website, on the JB Weld website, and it specifically says that it's good for polypropylene plastic, because reading on the internet, apparently this stuff is a bitch to glue. So I don't know if it works yet, I haven't tried it, but apparently it's good. So there's that. Okay, so I'm at the point where I need to glue this. I was originally going to use a piece of plastic that I got off of the snorkel portion, but I've decided against that for the time being, and I actually managed to find a lid to a large bucket that I had that happened to be made out of polypropylene. And what I did is I just traced out the inside portion and made a little crescent moon shape on there, and then just cut it out so that it covers these two little holes here and the big hole. And so I think that should do nicely. And then what I'm going to do after, I'm going to kind of do two phases here. I'm going to glue this onto the back, and that'll, realistically, I think that'll probably be fine. But I think afterwards I'm going to cut out some of this thicker material and put it on the inside just for some added strength. Yes, it appears to be approximately the same thickness as the material that's in there, so I don't have to worry about it being too thick. So yeah, so I'm going to just take a little piece of sandpaper here and scratch this all up, because you want good adhesion, and if this particular material, polypropylene, doesn't like to adhere with glue, then you could run into problems. So I would say scratch it up real good. So as you can see, I've put the piece of plastic on there, and I've added a couple other pieces of plastic here. So this one, epoxied it on, filled it up with two sort of larger chunks of polyethylene plastic from the snorkel, and a smaller piece there. Just epoxied that in there, slathered it with epoxy so it doesn't leak. This here goes to your EPA stuff, that stuff there. I am getting rid of that. I don't live in California or whatever, so no big deal. So I put a piece of plastic on the back, filled it up with epoxy on the inside. There's nothing going to be resting against this. This surface here is sort of a sealing surface that the filter is going to go on. So this is important to be kind of level. This not so much. And then the last portion is this part here. So I started out with a piece of plastic here, glued that on, and then there was still some cutout here and a hole in the side. So what I did is I cut another piece of plastic from the snorkel and epoxied that in there, and then put this piece over it afterwards. So I actually did that in 3 steps. So anyways, that's looks, well, it doesn't look that great now. I'm gonna try to smooth this out a bit and paint it so it's all kind of uniformly black. It's kind of on the front and mostly on the bottom side, so hopefully it won't be super noticeable. So I'm gonna use my Dremel to just finish up the few little rough edges that are left in here. It's not essential that it's ultra flat because we're going to be putting some foam. This is closed cell insulating foam. The size is 1/4 by 3/8, so 1/4 inch in height, 3/8 wide. Yeah, I do want to clean this up a little bit first. Okay, so I've cleaned this up a little bit better. You can just see this part here. I've taken it down a little bit, and there, and this as well. So now you're going to take your foam and put it around the outer edge. I did both strips of weather stripping around the edge. So outer one, doesn't matter where you start. Just do the outer edge, do the inner one. The inner one, when I went over where the carb boot goes in, it kind of overlaps where the carb boot actually sits. So I just trim that back a little bit. And but otherwise, that looks pretty good. I'll show you what happens here. So you take your filter. Anyways, that was certainly a bit of a pain to get in there, but everything looks good. This is probably really hard to see, but you actually see the edge the rubber edge of the filter there is actually pretty well flush with the inner lip of the filter or backing plate, so that's nice. So now that we have that done, we're going to move on to the air cover. Now I actually got a little bit carried away and decided to do this already, so I'm going to leave the quarter of the front piece intact. I'm going to cut it along this edge, and then this part will face the front. So now what I did is I taped it. I took a pen. You could probably use a ballpoint pen, but I have basically a really fine Sharpie. And what I did is I just you're supposed to make your line 1.5 inches up. So I just place this on something like, say, a cap or whatever, until it's at the height of 1.5 inches, and then I just spun this around so that way you get a nice even line. Now, since you're keeping a portion of this, you want to round this off so it doesn't look like shit. You don't just make it a square cut. So since it's 1.5 inches up, I decided to go 1.5 inches over as well, which would, make a circle. So what I did is 1.5 inches times 2 is 3 inches. So what I actually ended up doing is taking the inside of this roll of tape. I put it on, this is a piece of cardstock, but paper would work as well. Put it in there, traced around it, cut it out, so I have a circle. And then I just folded it in half, and then put it onto the outer edge of this, and just traced around it. I mean, you're cutting this out with the Dremel by hand, or whatever, a jigsaw or whatever, so, I mean, realistically, it's pretty damn close, so no worries. Alright, I've ground off the outer edge here. I didn't do the best job. It's a little bit wavy, especially like right there. I realized that I never showed how to. This is 1/4 of the outer circumference of the air box cover remaining. But how much is that? You need to do a little bit of math to figure that out. So if you measure this across, it is I measured it as being 8 5/8 or something like that across. Now that will go around the circumference 3.14 times. So you take 8 5/8, multiply by 3.14, and you get left with about 26.5. Now just take 26.5 and divide that by 4, and you get left with 6 5/8. So take a piece of paper or something like that, and measure out 6 5/8, wrap it around the side of it after you've taped it, of course, and just make your mark there. And that's the easiest way to do it. Or I don't know, maybe measure yours to find out what 25% is. I'm sure they're all the same size, but 6 5/8 might not be the size of yours. So in any case, this has been more or less deburred here. I have fit the filter into the back cover, which I've just Sharpied for the time being because I'm going to be lazy and not paint this for a while, because realistically speaking you're not going to see much of it. It's going to look like crap anyways because I got to get the trim for this. Yeah, so basically this goes on here, obviously on the motorcycle, and there we have it. You've got your filter exposed, and then you've got the front blocked from air hitting the filter directly, which apparently can cause issues with over pressurizing the carburetor or something like that. So there we are. This is a scooterized air intake.